Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and today we're going to be talking about my favorite power couple in professional wrestling. Now, maybe they weren't a power couple, that might be a stretch, but they were a very monumental couple, to say the least. I'm talking about none other than Triple H and Chyna. I think they're the best wrestling couple that we've ever seen, whether it's kayfabe or real life. Here's them in 1999, looking all strong and buff. And it's a couple that doesn't get talked about only because of where Triple H ended up in marrying Stephanie McMahon, and the rest is history, and the fortune they've made together, and Triple H basically being in charge of everything, even though it's under the TKO banner, and having 3 kids with Steph. And, this is a couple that started out based on an interest in wrestling, as a mutual interest. They've been together since 1996 all the way up to 2000. They were both trained by Killer Kowalski. Triple H will state that time and time again, but Chyna was trained by Killer Kowalski as well. And it was actually Triple H and his friend Shawn Michaels who were responsible for bringing Chyna into the World Wrestling Federation. It all started when Hunter Hearst Helmsley needed a manager. They tried out Mr. Hughes, Curtis Hughes, but he was kind of bland and not a great fit. He was just a bodyguard on 1 or 2 occasions, and then they suggested the Honky Tonk Man. Now, Honky Tonk Man never actually accompanied Hunter Hearst Helmsley to the ring. Well, Hunter liked the Honky Tonk Man. He needed something with a little more edge to it. Honky wasn't quite edgy enough then. So he had this idea to bring this strong woman in who could actually go toe-to-toe with the men, as we'll get to in a little bit. This was Joni Laurer, that's her birth name. So Hunter brought Chyna, in to the World Wrestling Federation with the insistence and backing of Shawn Michaels, and they pitched the idea to Vince McMahon, have a female bodyguard, only she could actually beat up the men here. She's not going to be like your typical valet, like a Miss Elizabeth or a Sable, just stands at ringside and cheering on their man. Rather, she'll get physical in the match. As you go back and watch any match with Triple H and with Chyna in his corner, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So now we fast forward to In Your House Final 4, February 1997. Hunter Hearst Helmsley lost his rematch to Rocky Maivia for the Intercontinental Championship after being taunted and distracted by Goldust on the outside. Marlena was just casually standing by, smoking her cigar at ringside, as she tended to do in those days. And this gargantuan, strong woman comes up to her and chokes her out. Ah! And I couldn't believe it when I saw her. I mean, she was pretty buff, and I had no idea. I had no clue who she was. And I remember JR on commentary is like, who the hell is she? Take her to jail. Finally, 2 security guards with their event staff jackets, same color as this shirt, come and take her away. And that's the last we saw of her that night. But we were wondering, who the hell was that? Then she appears again on Monday Night Raw and does the same thing, only jumps into the ring this time. So her name was later revealed to be Chyna, with a Y. And she accompanies Hunter to the ring in consecutive weeks. And she beats up opponents the likes of Flash Funk, Bart Gunn, Goldust, you name it, whoever were the mid-card babyfaces at the time. So they go on to, Hunter wins the King of the Ring, and he forms D-Generation X with Shawn Michaels. And DX was funny in the beginning because Chyna played the straight man to the wacky and wild joking side of Hunter and Shawn, who were always, not taking things seriously, as you can see. And Chyna just stood there, expressionless as always. And she didn't break character once. She didn't crack a smile, so I applaud her for that. Even when Ravishing Rick Rude was in the mix before he departed in November of 97. Excuse me. And, Rude was like the insurance policy. It's kind of like the legal counsel for the group. And Chyna was the bodyguard, and she played that role to perfection. But as time wore on, she began to stand out a lot more from her peers. And, she was a woman in a big sea of men here, being able to compete on their level because of her size. Not many women in the world of wrestling can say they've done that. So Chyna was a very special exception here, and a great one at that. By 1998, I think people started to take stock because she started to actually speak on the mic more. She was being interviewed by Michael Cole, I remember. It was like July or August of 98. And I forget exactly what the dialogue was, but at the end I remember she threw him off to the side. She just yanked him, threw him around like a rag doll, because Michael Cole was a scrawny little guy back then. And so now we fast forward to 1999, where she really starts to pick up momentum as a singles competitor. She becomes the first woman to ever enter a Royal Rumble match, drawing number 30. She won that corporate Royal Rumble, where all members of DX and the corporation competed in a Royal Rumble with less competitors. There's like 10 people in it versus the typical 30. And she won the right, lastly eliminated Mr. McMahon to win that coveted number 30 spot. She came in and cleaned house with Mark Henry, but it wasn't long before Stone Cold eliminated her, because that was the year with the bounty, the $1 million bounty on Austin. Whomever could eliminate him. So the next night, she turns heel after DX had turned face over the course of 1998, but then she turns heel by costing Hunter his match against The Rock, I Quit match for the WWF title, and she joins forces with the corporation, namely Kane. Now, Chyna and Kane never had a romantic relationship of any sort. It was more just because they were on the same allegiance here, both being corporate team members. So I remember they had this match, which is kind of forgettable. Hunter and X-Pac versus Kane and Chyna at St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Didn't really do much to further the angle here. And then that led to that singles match at WrestleMania 15 between Triple H and Kane, where I think Kane won by DQ, and then Chyna turned on Kane. And at that exact moment in time, we thought had turned face and reformed DX with Triple H. And, the family's all back together. It's all great. Come later on in the card, about 45 minutes to an hour later, the European title's on the line. X-Pac challenging Shane McMahon. We all thought we saw Hunter and Chyna come out. First Hunter. He takes out Test, all these corporate team members, Test being one of them, till he starts to kick X-Pac and perform a pedigree on him. Now Triple H has turned heel, and Chyna just goes along with him because she just reformed her relationship with Hunter. And keep in mind, they were still dating legitimately at the time. And now they're in the corporation together, Hunter and Chyna. Now, all the while as I'm talking about this, they were a real-life couple. Like I said, they dated in late 96, and it wasn't until early 97 that Chyna made her first appearance on WWF television. And now we're in 1999. Chyna's picking up even more steam now because she's the first woman to qualify and enter the King of the Ring tournament. But she doesn't make it any further than the first round. She wins the qualifying match. I forget who she beat to advance there. Then loses to Road Dogg on the pay-per-view in the first round or quarterfinals, whatever the hell you want to call it. So, but it's just monumental that a woman had never done that before in wrestling, so kudos to her. And then she enters the world title picture in the summer of 99. Triple H at this point is sick and tired of waiting for his shot. You know, the whole MSG incident with the Click really hurt his stock for about a year, and the King of the Ring in 97 didn't quite propel him to the top. So after enough Intercontinental European title reigns, he's sick of everything having to do with being on the back burner, and cuts this sort of work shoot on Sunday Night Heat right before Fully Loaded 99 with JR, where he refers to himself as the Game for the first time in any promos. Pardon me. I am the Game, and I am that damn good, and it's my goal to become the World Wrestling Federation champion. And he's swearing a lot in that promo, and I remember JR was miffed by it. It was like, watch your language. So anyways, Triple H wins a strap match that night, number one contender for Stone Cold's WWF title at SummerSlam that year. This is Fully Loaded 99. And Chyna, meanwhile, is involved in a match for the rights to the DX name and merchandise. She and Billy Gunn, who had just turned heel after the Outlaws broke up in the spring of 99, she and Billy Gunn, Mr. Ass, team up to take on X-Pac and Road Dogg, the two remaining baby faces of DX. And they were fighting over the rights to the name. Chyna, Mr. Ass lost, so X-Pac and Road Dogg won the match, but didn't really do much to further that storyline because the whole angle was pretty much dropped the next night on Raw. There was no reformation of DX right then and there until the fall of 99, but that's a different storyline altogether, which I'm not going to get into. So Chyna now involves herself in the world title picture because I think there was a triple threat match. It was a little bit convoluted at this time, but I think there was a triple threat match or a singles match, maybe. It was Hunter, Chyna, and Mankind. Chyna somehow gets the win. Hunter's upset about it. He's outraged. He's livid. And then I think another week later they have a singles match, and then Chyna wins again, and it started to develop a little friction. Chyna, why are you doing this to me? And then finally, I guess she relents, or I guess he wins another match. I haven't been following, I haven't revisited that storyline, that timeline, the summer of '99, and what led to that triple threat match in the main event with Jesse Ventura as the guest referee. So forgive me if the timeline's a little bit screwy here. But yes, she finally relents and gives Hunter the world title match that he desperately wanted. Now, Hunter finally got his win in Ames, Iowa against Mankind the next night on Raw after SummerSlam, and finally wins his first of, 14 world titles. And the rest is history on that one. Chyna, meanwhile, diverts her attention to the Intercontinental title picture. Jeff Jarrett had just started his 6th Intercontinental title reign and put a sign-up sheet on a clipboard backstage for anyone who wants to challenge him for his belt. Chyna signs on the dotted line. And of course, Jarrett's outraged because he didn't think a woman was going to challenge him. Jarrett, you're so wrong. Anybody can challenge you, buddy. So Chyna is now engaged in that feud, while Triple H is doing his thing in the world title picture. So their paths haven't really crossed now. They're diverting, but they're still in the same alliance, so to speak. And the corporate ministry had long been dissolved. They're still friends with Shane McMahon, who was still a heel, but I guess became a face after he gave Test his blessing to marry his sister, Stephanie, which, of course, that didn't happen. But, as Chyna is gaining steam and popularity, she's gaining more steam in that Intercontinental title feud, fans are beginning to cheer for her more while they're booing Triple H. So, last time I actually saw them together was No Mercy of '99. Chyna made history, becoming the first woman to win the Intercontinental Championship. And this is long before we had the women's Intercontinental title like we have now. In fact, just last night at Money in the Bank, Becky Lynch became the only second woman to win the women's Intercontinental title when she dethroned Lyra Valkyria. So, go Becky. So, back to Chyna now. Triple H, by hook or by crook, was able to retain his WWF title against Steve Austin at No Mercy '99, the U.S. version from Cleveland, Ohio. And Chyna helps him get into their little getaway car. She grabs him by the wrist, like, okay, come on, let's go. They drive out of the arena while Austin's trying to chase him. It's like, oh, that son of a bitch got away. That's the last we ever saw of those two together, because the next night on Raw, and this is my memory from when I was 10 years old, Chyna comes out and cuts a promo, her first promo as Intercontinental Champion, and she brings out Miss Kitty with her, who was Jeff Jarrett's former valet, who just dyed her hair pitch black and became the Cat. Well, she hadn't become the Cat yet, but she was slowly transitioning into the Cat, but she'd become Chyna's, manager, I guess, her little mini-me. So she was dressed identical to Chyna. It was kind of cute if you look back at it. So the Cat had a brief alliance with Chyna here, just because, they looked alike, just the hair and the dress attire, the clothing and whatnot. So while that was happening, Triple H reformed DX, and they all got back together again as heels. Triple H, X-Pac, Road Dogg, Mr. Ass, no Chyna. And then he sort of brought his attention, put his attention towards Stephanie McMahon in trying to ruin that wedding. And we all know what happened there, so I don't think I'm going to go into too much detail. But it begs the question, was there ever going to be a write-off as far as, Chyna leaving Hunter leaving Chyna? Were they going to actually have an angle where it gets blown off, where they actually have a match against one another? None of this was ever clearly explained, and Hunter will deny any claims of cheating on Chyna with Stephanie, and he'll say what he wants to say, and she said what she wanted to in interviews past, especially with Michael Landsberg on Off the Record, that Canadian-based radio sports talk show. So it was also confusing to me because they were a strong alliance in '99, and then just come the fall, they kind of separated like this, and then Triple H was with another woman. Now, all the stories I heard was that they were still together at least by, I think, until the summer, fall of 2000, by which point, because Triple H and Stephanie were so engulfed in an angle together, art imitates real life here, so to speak, forgive the botched expression, in that Triple H gravitates towards Stephanie for real. He's like, okay, I actually like this woman better. So I strongly believe he cheated on Chyna, because, they were a hot item, Triple H and Chyna, and then just quietly dissipated with no kayfabe explanation, no real life explanation. You have to take it with a grain of salt. Depends whose side you want to take and who you want to listen to. And then I think that led to Chyna's departure from the company in the spring of 2001. By 2000, Chyna was doing her own thing with, she was with Chris Jericho at one point, and then with Eddie Guerrero, and then feuding with Eddie, and then she ended up in the women's title feud with Ivory, and feuding with Right to Censor by extension because of her Playboy cover shoot. And then her last match was against Lita, Judgment Day 2001, and we never saw or heard from Chyna ever again after that. She was the women's champion up until maybe the fall that year, and then she decided not to renew her contract, and there were some contract disputes going on, so we didn't know if Chyna was actually coming back, and then of course they had to get the women's title off of her. Had they known that was going to happen, they really should have had Lita win that match at Judgment Day, but of course things didn't play out that way. So I'd like to know more on this story because, again, a great couple right here, and they dominated the main event scene, especially in 1999, and then all of a sudden one half of that dominant couple is gone. And now we've got Triple H and Stephanie. And Triple H and Stephanie were not a bad couple, and they're happily married now because, they spent so much time together, they just gravitated towards one another. But there's just so many questions left unanswered, and we'll never know. Chyna died in 2016, just 9 years ago, at the young age of 46. And her life really spiraled out of control post-WWF. Drug addiction, and she had that sex tape with X-Pac one night in China. A lot of appearances on the Howard Stern show, and I think she had a time going to Japan for wrestling not long after a WWF departure. And she made a short stint in TNA wrestling in the spring of 2011, though not following TNA a whole lot. I don't really know exactly what she was involved in. And then, unfortunately, things just continue to get worse for her, and I just feel so bad because she seemed like a good person deep down inside, despite what people might say. But she was really broken, I feel, and she had a rough upbringing too. She was estranged from her parents. They didn't accept her for, not being a girly girl. Was kind of more of a tomboy, and I think she had some other family issues too. So Chyna didn't really have an easy life, didn't have an easy path. So this is kind of a sentimental one for me. So anyways, that's all I've got on this story right now, and if anybody has any input, please feel free to add it to the comments, and correct me if I'm wrong on anything. This is just information secondhand that I'm presenting here, and the views that are expressed are, of course, mine. So anyways, that's all I've got for you today. This has been another great edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling. Until next time, everybody, bye-bye.